Welcome to Global Watch. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. On November 11, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered a seismic ruling, striking down Oregon's Measure 114, one of the strictest state gun laws in history. In a 6-3 decision, the court's conservative majority declared that states have far less power to regulate firearms, reshaping the national landscape for gun legislation. The case, Oregon Firearms Federation versus Kotek, challenged a law banning high-capacity magazines and requiring permits to purchase guns. The ruling is a victory for gun rights advocates and a devastating blow to those seeking stricter gun laws, raising urgent questions about how states can address gun violence moving forward. As the nation absorbs this historic verdict, the battle over guns, freedom, and safety enters a new, more restrictive era. Measure 114 was born from tragedy and frustration, placed on Oregon's 2022 ballot by faith leaders and activists desperate for action after repeated mass shootings. The measure banned magazines holding more than 10 rounds and created a permit-to-purchase system requiring safety training and a completed background check. Supporters called it common sense. Opponents saw it as an attack on constitutional rights. The law passed by a razor-thin margin, exposing deep urban-rural divides. Urban counties like Portland backed it, while rural regions rejected it outright. For some, it was a victory for public safety. For others, an unconstitutional assault on their way of life. The stage was set for a fierce legal and political battle. When Oregon voters narrowly approved Measure 114, a sweeping gun control initiative, few could have predicted the legal odyssey that would follow. Almost immediately after the ballots were counted, the law was frozen by a flurry of lawsuits, halting its implementation before it could ever take effect. Over the next 3 years, Measure 114 became the epicenter of a relentless legal battle, with courtrooms across the state and nation consumed by arguments and appeals. The law's fate hung in limbo as time passed, and the legal process dragged on. Gun rights advocates, including national organizations and local activists, quickly mobilized, arguing that Measure 114 trampled on both the Oregon Constitution and the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. They claimed the law's restrictions on magazine capacity and new permit requirements were unprecedented and unlawful. On the other side, Oregon's Department of Justice, backed by supporters of the measure, mounted a vigorous defense. They insisted the law reflected the will of the voters and was a necessary step to address gun violence and improve public safety. The first major decision came from a rural Oregon judge, who ruled that Measure 114 was unconstitutional under state law, effectively blocking its enforcement and sending shockwaves through both sides of the debate. But the legal story didn't end there. The Oregon Court of Appeals later reversed that decision, reigniting the controversy and setting the stage for further legal showdowns. Meanwhile, in federal court, judges grappled with whether Measure 114 could withstand the Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin decision, which set a new, stricter standard for evaluating gun laws by requiring a clear historical precedent for any regulation. The case ricocheted between state and federal courts, with each ruling drawing national attention and speculation. Ultimately, the legal saga reached its climax as the U.S. Supreme Court agreed to weigh in, placing Measure 114 at the heart of a national debate. As the case unfolded, Measure 114 became a symbol, a test case watched by lawmakers, activists, and citizens across the country, all wondering what its outcome would mean for the future of gun control in America. Now, after years of uncertainty and fierce legal wrangling, today's ruling finally brings this extraordinary chapter in Oregon's legal and political history to a close. The Supreme Court's 6-3 decision, authored by Justice Clarence Thomas, struck down both the magazine ban and permit-to-purchase requirement as unconstitutional. The majority ruled that these provisions violated the Second Amendment, relying on a strict historical test set by the Bruin decision. Gun rights advocates celebrated, calling it a restoration of constitutional liberty. Gun control supporters, meanwhile, condemned the ruling as a dangerous setback for public safety. The decision deepens the ideological divide, with the court's conservatives expanding gun rights and the liberals warning of deadly consequences. The ruling's impact will ripple through courts and legislatures nationwide. Justice Thomas's opinion applied the Bruin framework, insisting that only regulations with clear historical precedent are constitutional. He argued that high-capacity magazines are in common use and cannot be banned without a historical analog. The court dismissed Oregon's public safety arguments, focusing solely on history. The permit-to-purchase system was also struck down, with the majority finding no tradition of requiring law-abiding citizens to seek government permission to buy firearms. The opinion sets a high bar for future gun laws, demanding they mirror regulations from the nation's founding era. For states, innovating on gun control just became nearly impossible. In dissent, Justice Sotomayor accused the majority of turning the Second Amendment into a regulatory straitjacket. The dissent argued that the court's rigid historical test ignores modern realities and strips states of the power to address gun violence. They warned that requiring a historical twin for gun laws is unworkable in the face of today's firearms. The dissenters cited evidence linking large-capacity magazines to mass shootings and defended the permit system as a reasonable safeguard. They predicted the ruling would unleash a wave of lawsuits against gun safety laws nationwide. The dissent concluded that the court's decision will cost lives and undermines democracy. The divide on the court mirrors the nation's own deep rift over guns. The Supreme Court's ruling in the Oregon case sent shockwaves across the nation, instantly putting similar gun laws in jeopardy in states like California, New York, and Washington. These states, which have some of the strictest firearm regulations in the country, now face an uncertain legal landscape. The decision has forced lawmakers and officials to reconsider the very foundation of their gun control measures, as the precedent set by the court could unravel years of legislative work. Attorneys general in these states are bracing for a wave of lawsuits, scrambling to defend their laws in courtrooms that may now be less sympathetic to gun control. Legal teams are working overtime, preparing new arguments and strategies, while state officials consult with experts to assess the risks and potential fallout. Meanwhile, gun rights groups are mobilizing rapidly, preparing to challenge a wide range of regulations they see as unconstitutional. For the firearms industry, the ruling is a potential windfall, opening the door to expanded markets and fewer restrictions on sales and distribution. Manufacturers and retailers are watching closely, anticipating increased demand and fewer legal hurdles. But for law enforcement agencies and state governments, the decision brings confusion and concern. Police departments worry about the impact on public safety, while state officials fear wasted resources and the unraveling of policies designed to protect communities. The ruling has also deepened the already stark divide between urban and rural America, with each side interpreting the decision through its own lens. In blue states, the decision has fueled calls for sweeping court reform and intensified skepticism toward the judiciary. Protesters demand changes, and public trust in the courts is eroding, as many feel their voices are being ignored. The sense of frustration is palpable, with some questioning the legitimacy of the legal process itself. In contrast, red states celebrate the ruling as a major victory for constitutional liberty and individual rights. Gun owners and conservative politicians hail the decision as a restoration of freedoms they believe were under threat. Rallies and speeches echo with praise for the court's commitment to the Second Amendment. Now, state lawmakers across the country must justify any new gun laws by referencing 18th-century legal precedents, giving judges unprecedented power as arbiters of history. This shift forces a complete rethinking of how gun laws are written, interpreted, and defended in court, with legal teams poring over centuries-old documents to make their case. The fallout from the Oregon decision will shape the future of American gun policy for years, if not decades, to come, influencing debates in legislatures, courtrooms, and communities nationwide. In Oregon, reactions are as divided as ever. Rural gun owners and opponents of Measure 114 celebrate the ruling as a victory for constitutional rights and rural values. This was never about safety. It was about Portland telling us how to live, says rancher Dave Miller. For supporters of the measure, the decision is a devastating loss and a betrayal of democracy. McKay Solberg, who lost her husband to gun violence, says, "We followed the rules, we won, and now it's all wiped away." Faith leaders vow to continue fighting for safer communities, calling the ruling a setback, not the end. The verdict is not just a legal outcome, it's a call to action for both sides. Oregon's gun debate is now a national flashpoint. The Supreme Court's decision on Measure 114 marks a new era in America's gun debate, sending shockwaves through the legal and political landscape. This landmark ruling is not just another chapter in the ongoing conversation about firearms. It's a turning point that will shape the nation's approach to gun rights and regulation for years to come. The decision signals a dramatic shift in how the highest court interprets the Constitution, and its effects will ripple through every level of government and society. By elevating a strict historical reading of the Second Amendment above state policy choices, the court has set a new standard for evaluating gun laws. This approach demands that any regulation must be deeply rooted in the nation's history and tradition, making it far more difficult for states to justify modern restrictions. The ruling challenges decades of legal precedent and places the burden on lawmakers to prove that their policies align with the original intent of the founders. Gun rights groups are now poised to challenge a broad range of laws, from assault weapon bans to red flag laws, background checks, and even waiting periods. Energized by the court's decision, these organizations see an opportunity to roll back regulations they argue infringe on constitutional freedoms. Legal teams are preparing to file lawsuits across the country, targeting any measure that doesn't have a clear historical precedent. This new legal landscape is forcing states into costly and complex legal battles. Legislatures must now defend their laws in courtrooms rather than simply passing them through democratic processes. The financial and political stakes are high as states weigh the costs of litigation against the perceived need to protect public safety. The judiciary, not legislatures, will now shape gun policy. Judges will become the ultimate arbiters of what regulations stand and which fall, shifting power away from elected officials and into the hands of the courts. This fundamental change raises questions about the balance of power in American democracy and the role of the courts in interpreting the Constitution. Gun control advocates must shift strategies, rethinking how to protect communities in a legal environment that is increasingly hostile to regulation. Activists are exploring new approaches, such as focusing on community-based interventions, education, and voluntary programs, while also seeking to influence public opinion and future judicial appointments. Their efforts now center on measures the court hasn't yet restricted, such as safe storage laws, mental health initiatives, and violence prevention programs. Advocates are also working to build coalitions across political lines, hoping to find common ground on issues like background checks and gun safety education. The ruling exposes a nation deeply divided over freedom, safety, and the Constitution itself. The debate is no longer just about policy, it's about identity, values, and the very meaning of American liberty. Communities across the country are grappling with what this decision means for their safety and their rights. For one side, the decision is an affirmation of a sacred right, a validation of the belief that the ability to bear arms is fundamental to American freedom and self-reliance. Gun owners and advocates celebrate the ruling as a victory for individual liberty and constitutional principles. For the other, it represents a reckless sacrifice of public safety, a move that could make it harder to prevent gun violence and protect vulnerable communities. Victims' families, law enforcement, and public health officials warn that the decision could have tragic consequences. This is more than a legal fight. It's a clash of values at the heart of American identity. The conversation is emotional, passionate, and often deeply personal, reflecting the fears and hopes of millions of Americans on both sides of the issue. The central question remains, can a nation so divided ever find common ground on guns, or will this ruling deepen the rift? As the debate continues, the search for solutions that honor both freedom and safety becomes more urgent than ever.